Welcome back to Weird NASCAR Rumors. Today, we're going to be talking about a year that many of you have been requesting, and that's 2007. The year of the Dale Earnhardt Jr. Sweepstakes, and lots of other fun rumors that could have changed the course of NASCAR history. So, let's jump in. Leading off today, we actually have the Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and Robert Yates Racing merger. I know, everyone immediately thinks of the Dale Jr. storylines, but the DEI storylines actually went beyond just Jr. himself. Robert Yates Racing won a championship with Dale Jarrett in 1999, but by 2007 they were clearly on the decline and looking for ways that they could make the team stronger. There was a brief rumor that New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft was going to invest in the team, which could have brought them a big infusion of cash. But the bigger, more persistent story was about the potential merger with or buyout from DEI, who wanted to expand to a four-car team. One of the biggest hangups seemed to be which manufacturer this blended team would go with. DEI was synonymous with Chevy, and Yates had the same sort of relationship with Ford, and still does to this day with Roush Yates engines. So, which brand was going to win out? Doug Yates was adamant that Ford was going to be the team's manufacturer for the deal to work, according to Speed TV. But ESPN reported that he wasn't 100% closing the door on running Chevys. There was also a really brief rumor that got reported in the Winston Salem Journal that Toyota might jump in from the sidelines and scoop up the potential DEI-Yates team. Interestingly enough, Toyota's Lee Smith actually said that Toyota was not involved and that the relationship between DEI, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Chevrolet was important for the health of the sport as a whole, and Toyota was not ready to interfere with that. That's paraphrasing, but I'll put the actual quote in the description. After Dale Jr. announced that he'd be leaving DEI, the talks seemed to cool, with Doug Yates saying that the situation was different than it was before the announcement, and at this point saying that a refusal to run Fords would be a deal breaker. Ultimately, DEI would buy out Ginn Racing to get its fourth car, and Yates would eventually merge with Richard Petty Motorsports. But I think a DEI-Yates team would have been stronger than either of the two teams that ended up coming to be, even if it would have been bizarre to see a DEI Ford or a Yates Chevy. Okay, we're going to talk about the Dale Jr. Sweepstakes, but before we do, did you know that he actually wrote a book on his struggle with concussions and his recovery from them? It's called Racing to the Finish, and it's actually a really good book. And if you want to get a free audiobook version of it, then you can use my link in the description to get a free trial with Audible. I'm sure that, like me, you know that there is nothing more valuable than time, and I am thrilled to be affiliated with Audible because they've given me time back. Look, I have 2 kids, my 9-to-5 job, and I'm in grad school on top of that. I don't have time to sit down and read a book, but with Audible, I can be listening to the books that I want to read while I'm driving to work, at the gym, or doing the dishes. It's given me back the time to read and learn, which is just awesome. Racing to the Finish isn't a really long book, and if you have a 30-minute commute to work, then you can finish it in a week just listening while you're driving to and from work. And Amazon Prime members will get to pick out a second book with their free 30-day trial as well. So, check out the link below and get your free 30-day trial of Audible and listen to Dale Jr. tell his story. It's a great way to support the channel, and I know you'll enjoy it. Now, on to the Dale Jr. Sweepstakes. We all know that in 2007, Dale Earnhardt Jr. left his father's house and went to Hendrick Motorsports. But early on, Hendrick denied any possibility that Jr. was going to be headed there. Roger Penske said early on that he wanted to throw his hat in the ring, but Jr. made it clear that he wanted to stick with a Chevy team, and Penske was committed to Dodge at that time, so that never really went anywhere. When the news of the departure from DEI initially broke, it seemed like everyone assumed that Richard Childress Racing was going to be the landing place, and the number 3 would be returning to the track with Dale Sr.'s son behind the wheel. There were some reports early on that suggested that it was a done deal and that Earnhardt and Budweiser would both be going to RCR together, and the car number would actually be 33. Obviously, that was pretty premature. At the same time, there was a rumor that Dale would be bringing Junior Motorsports to the Cup Series full-time with the support of Hendrick Motorsports, and that Martin Truex Jr. would be leaving DEI with him. In reality, it would be another 18 years until JRM would make its Cup Series debut at Daytona this year. The funniest and also most terrible possible outcome would have been if he had signed with Ginn Racing. Bobby Ginn made it no secret that he wanted to sign Earnhardt, and considering Ginn would merge with DEI just a couple of months later, it would immediately put Junior right back onto the sinking ship that was DEI. Although, if we're being serious, I think signing Junior probably would have prevented that merger from ever happening, which may have actually been even worse in the end. The team that seemed to have the strongest connection to Dale Jr. was Joe Gibbs Racing. Gibbs hadn't yet announced the move from Chevy to Toyota, and JJ Yaley was really struggling in the 18 car, and Jr. seemed like a perfect fit for the team. To this day, I think he would have done really well in the 18 car. But one of the hang-ups seemed to be that team owner Joe Gibbs would not allow Budweiser to come with him, as he didn't want an alcohol company sponsoring one of his cars. Also, if Junior had signed with JGR, one of two really weird things would have happened. Either Dale Earnhardt Jr. would have driven a Toyota, or JGR would have never switched to Toyota. My gut tells me that JGR probably ends up staying with Chevy in this scenario, which is weird because today I can only think of them as a Toyota team. If that ended up being true, there's also a question about whether or not Stewart-Haas Racing ever exists. There wasn't just one factor that led to Tony Stewart leaving Gibbs to form SHR in 2009, but one thing that was pretty widely known was that Smoke never wanted to leave Chevy, and joining forces with Haas allowed him to get back to Chevy after a one-year stint with Toyota in 2008. In the end, Dale Jr. ended up with Hendrick Motorsports, and the rest is history. Also, one last note on this. It was rumored that Monster Energy would be sponsoring Junior at Hendrick, which I think would have actually been pretty cool. Next up, we have a couple of Rusty Wallace rumors. Let's start with Rusty Wallace Incorporated. You remember when Rusty had a Busch Series team? The rumor was that RWI might be going Cup Series racing in 2008. At the time, Rusty was on the ESPN broadcast team, and there was a clause in his contract that would have prevented him from owning a Cup Series team due to conflicts of interest. Rusty did say that he would consider selling a majority stake in the team, so maybe the clause prevented him from being a majority owner? There was also a rumor that Rusty had an offer from Richard Childress Racing to get back behind the wheel, but he turned it down. Both Wallace and Childress denied it, but RCR was trying to start a fourth team, and the move would have made sense. Most of the people I've talked to seem to think that Wallace would have headed to the '07 Jack Daniels Chevy, not a fourth car. And I'm not sure how much real substance there was to this, but the jokes would have been spectacular. Just imagine Rusty Wallace, the driver we all associate with Miller Lite, coming out of retirement to drive the Jack Daniels car. Tagline could have been, "I'm gonna need something stronger to deal with these kids." Would have been great. Okay, let's wrap up with Red Bull and Guenther Steiner. Did you know that Steiner ran Red Bull's NASCAR operation? Yep, and in honor of the release of the new season of Drive to Survive, let's talk about everyone's favorite man from that show and Red Bull. Red Bull broke into the sport with Toyota in 2007, and before their first year was even over, there were rumors that they would be looking for a new manufacturer. Toyota's first year in the Cup Series was rough. There's no other way of putting it. And after Joe Gibbs Racing announced they'd be moving to Toyota in 2008, there was talk that Red Bull's owner was unhappy with the team's performance, and there was a chance that they may slide over to Chevy to fill the gap left by JGR. This was denied by both Guenther Steiner and Elton Sawyer, who was, at the time, Red Bull's competition director. Steiner did talk about how difficult the season had been, and also admitted to not fully grasping the top 35 rule for qualifying. Side note, do you think that the top 35 rule should come back to replace the charter system? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, Red Bull would stay with Toyota until the team closed. There was also a rumor that they would be starting a third team for Scott Speed, but needed another sponsor to make that happen. The third car never happened, but Scott Speed did end up with Red Bull following AJ Allmendinger's departure. Anyway, that's what I've got for today. Please remember to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed, and go grab your free trial of Audible and an audio copy of Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Racing to the Finish with my link below. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.